Look, they don't do these very often. This is the first one in 40 years and only the third one in 100 years of Chinese Communist Party history. So, yeah, it's pretty significant.
Is this more about the man or the party?
Look, it's about both. So a lot of the coverage I've been seeing has been saying it's all about Xi Jinping, but Xi Jinping is all about the party. So if you're talking about history, this is really history being written as the great party version of history rather than the great man version of history. Complicating that is that Xi Jinping is the central figure in all of this. So he's sort of written himself into party history as a central figure. And those who've come before him, particularly Hu Jintao and Jiang Zemin, have faded out almost completely to be almost irrelevant to party history.
It does, though, cement the future course that he wants to take China on. This is this common prosperity, a far more socialist version of what we've seen in the last 20 years.
Absolutely. And when you sort of read through this document, and it's pretty turgid kind of language, but it contains things like the ideology has undergone a fundamental change. So it's very upfront about saying this is a break with the old era. This is a break with the era of reform and opening, the freebooting capitalism and corruption that went with that. We are now in a new era. So it's it's significant, if hard to read.
Which is becoming more and more the case in terms of the way things are closing in China. But, you know, read the tea leaves for us. What does it actually mean in terms of what life in China is going to be like?
Look, I think even Paul Keating admitted that life in China had become increasingly authoritarian, and this is a marker that this will be the case, but also a marker that what he's promising to deliver in terms of these slogans of common prosperity, of bringing China into a new phase of socialism, it's sort of putting, you know, if you like, meat on the bones of that to make China both stronger but also less unequal.
What does it mean, importantly, though, for China's position globally?
In terms of China's position globally, it's absolutely, it's, you know, in terms of these sorts of resolutions, the previous one in 81 and the one in 1945, of course, China was a very poor country. Now China is really at the centre of world events. And even as you've been reporting on the news today, this deal with the US over climate change, this idea that the party through Xi is now a major player is, if you like, played into the domestic audience to shore up Xi Jinping back home to say, look, what we are now, we're now, you know, playing with the big boys.
And you know, when you talk about it not just being about Xi, this would, even though we won't know until next year, really, you would think, cement his leadership and the fact that he is going to serve more than two 5-year terms.
Look, absolutely. And the huge subtext to all of this is that this time next year, they'll be voting on, do we give him a third term, which would be the first leader since Mao Zedong to take that step. So the reason he needs legitimacy within the party is that he won't face opposition down the line. It seems very unlikely that that will occur, but, you know, he is a long time in opaque Chinese politics.
Indeed. And, you know, I guess he has been trying to shore up that support. He's nervous about leaving home, which is why he didn't go to COP26. But talk to us about this sort of surprise pact between the US and China. How real is it? Is it any indication that the relations are thawing between the two sides?
Well, it goes beyond this. So the phone calls, not just a phone call, but a series of phone calls seem to have been scheduled in between Xi Jinping and Joe Biden, which is an interesting turn of events, given that, you know, for example, our politicians can't land a phone call with anyone in China these days. So it is, if you like, an interesting turn of events in foreign affairs. So it does suggest that in certain fields, as America has decided, that they won't be enemies. But in other fields, they quite happily will be. Do
you think it's going to lead to the first meeting between Biden and Xi Jinping?
It's not something you would rule out, yes. There's serious signals coming from both sides that that's what they want.
Graeme, great to get your analysis, and we'll, as you say, continue to try and read through those documents as they are released more widely. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.